Welcome to part 4 of the React crash course. In this part, we'll learn about a new hook called useEffect. The useEffect hook is used to create side effects. For example, in some cases, you might want to fetch data upon mounting of a component, or you might want to manage your subscriptions. The useEffect hook is very useful for this, and we'll learn how to use it in this video. Now I've made a small change to the app. Here at the top, we are showing the price of Bitcoin in USD. But of course, it's not really showing the price right now. We need to fetch the data first. So let's see in the code how we do that. Now here I created the BTC price component, and here I got a function. This is the function that's gonna fetch the price of Bitcoin. Now normally you would use an API. However, since I don't have a backend for this example, I am just setting the price inside the set timeout function. As you can see, what we're doing is that after 200 seconds, we're going to set the price of Bitcoin. Now what I want to do is that when the app starts, I want to make this call. So what I'm going to do is here, I'm going to type useEffect, because I want, as a side effect, I want to call it at the start. So I'm going to go here, useEffect, the useEffect hook. Now the useEffect hook as an argument takes a function. And inside this function, I'm going to say that I want to call get BTC price. But as a second argument, I'm going to pass an empty array. So let me just save it and see what happens. Let's save and look in the app. Here, if I refresh, we see it's $0 and it turns to $50,000. So what is happening here is that this function is being called when the component is being mounted at the start completely of the app. And that is one of the use of the useEffect hook. You can use it to call data initially upon mounting a component, just like that. But you might be wondering, why are we passing an empty array? Well, to better illustrate, we'll look at a second example. What we're going to do is that we're going to set a loading state, and once we actually get the price, we want to, depending on the loading state, show an alert. Now, again, I've made a small change. Here I have a loading state. So by default, it starts as true. And then when we fetch the BTC price, then I set it at false. In the app, it looks pretty simple. If I reload, it shows loading, wait 2 seconds, and then it shows the data. It mimics kind of a real-life scenario. And now what we want to do, for example, is when the loading variable is true, I want to create an alert saying, by the way, we got the BTC price. What I'm going to do is another useEffect, because it's another side effect. And here I'm going to say alert. We got the BTC data. We got the BTC data. And as an argument, now in this array, instead of leaving it empty, I'm going to put loading. And what will happen? That's not it. I'm going to also do this as a conditional. If loading, if no loading, then you do an alert. Now, what is going to happen with that? The value that is passed inside the array signifies that the function will only be triggered when there's a change in the loading value. So it's gonna be executed at the start and then when there's a change. And so because we don't want this alert to pop up right at the beginning, we have to put a conditional so that if the loading value is false, we do not want to show the alert. So let's see the example. So here is the example. I'm going to refresh. It shows loading.
and then it shows an alert, we got the BTC data. And just to come back here, so the value inside is the variables that when they change or initially, they determine if the function is going to be triggered. Now, what is important is that you can have multiple variables. So you could have loading 2, loading 3, etc. And if you come back to the previous value here, when it is empty, now we understand why it's only at the beginning of the mounting of the component, is because we did not supply a value. Therefore, when there's no value inside the array, the useEffect function is only going to be triggered at the start. And when there is a value, it's going to be triggered at the start and anytime the variable changes. And now the last case in which we can use the useEffect hook is when there's not even an array passed. When there is no array passed to the useEffect hook, it's going to be executed every single render of the hook, of the component. And you might be wondering, why would you want to use that? Well, one use case is with subscription. So what you would do with a subscription is you would make like const unsubscribe is equal to subscribe. Now it's not real code, it's just an example. And what it's going to do is that every render is going to subscribe. But of course, as you know, if you know about subscription, at some point you need to also unsubscribe. So how are we going to do that to unsubscribe? It's like this. We pass a return function. It's another function. And here we call unsubscribe. Now this function that is returned by useEffect is called the cleanup function. So it's going to be executed at the end of the life cycle of the component and right before there is another render. So what is going to happen, which is a subscription, is that upon rendering, it's going to subscribe. Then at the end of the life cycle, it's going to unsubscribe and immediately afterward subscribe again. Furthermore, this unsubscribe, this cleanup function is also going to be executed once the component is unmounted. So it cleans up everything at the end. Now you might have one question about that, is why would you subscribe and unsubscribe upon every render? Why not do it only upon mounting and unmounting? There's one reason for that, is that very often we pass props to the subscribe, the subscribe function. And the problem with that is that when the props change, sometimes it can create unsuspected bugs that we haven't predicted, because the subscription is done at the beginning and does not account for the change in props. And so it's a good practice to subscribe and unsubscribe upon every render, unless of course there is a performance issue. But in general, we want to do that. Now I'm going to comment stuff, because of course it's not a real subscription. And that's it. And now we learned about the useEffect hook. It's a hook that, as we've seen, we can use it to fetch data upon mounting of a component. We can use it to create side effects when variable changes. And we can use it to subscribe and unsubscribe by running it every render by not putting an array argument at the end. And that concludes part 4 of the React crash course. Come back next week and we'll discuss about routing in React. See ya.